Most golf coaches are known for what they do for your ranking. Sean Foley is known for how he makes you think. At 13 years old in Burlington, Ontario, Sean saw David Ledbetter working with Nick Faldo, and in that moment, he knew he wasn't chasing trophies. He was chasing truth. That clarity carried him from Canada to Orlando, where he became one of the most influential coaches in the game, guiding players like Tiger Woods and Justin Rose. His philosophy, he doesn't coach swings, he coaches people. And I've been fortunate to know Sean for years, and he's one of the most interesting, curious minds I have ever met. He's a deep, deep hip-hop aficionado who can pull life lessons out of a verse the way coaches pull data out of a track fit. He's raw, he's real, and he doesn't believe in playing it safe, which is why conversations with him always hit different. And here's what really blows me away. When my kids run into Sean at the club or anywhere, they'll stop and talk with him like he's their old friend. 20 minutes later, they're still locked in, hanging on every word like they just scored front row seats to something big. And that's Sean Foley. You can't be around him without going deep, whether you're Tiger Woods or just a kid trying to figure out life. He has a way of flipping the script and dropping wisdom that sticks. Sean Foley, welcome to Legends of the Arena.
Thanks, boys. Nice that we. You know what? I wish my kids were as interested in listening to me as your kids are.
They truly are fascinated, dude. Like it.
Well, mine are truly not fascinated.
Sean, welcome to the show, man. We're glad to have you.
Justin.
So there are so many places we could start, Sean. You've got an incredible life story. You got to hit on. There's a ton of stuff we want to dive into, but can you unpack? I think everybody most notably, right, associates you with Tiger, with Justin, with that. Like walk us through first of all. Like, did you ever have aspirations of being a pro golfer? Was it always like you want the coach path, or how did you even get down this path in the first place?
Yeah, I think it was always just golf. I started working at a golf course when I first decided to play golf. I'd been playing soccer, and my dad's from Glasgow, from Scotland, so it might have been more his dream than mine. But I was playing soccer all the time. I played on a select team, and then I used to just complain about the refs, the coaches, everyone on the team. So my dad was like, "Okay, this is not a team player." And to be a tribe of one's kind of been constant ever since I was little. And so he took me to a driving range like after that a little bit. And he had taught himself how to play golf while being a sales guy at DuPont. And so he was in the early days, like 1982 to 84, doing corporate golf. It wasn't really a big thing yet in DuPont in Wilmington, because we moved from Toronto to Wilmington, and then San Fran, LA, Toronto, Vancouver, Toronto, Nashville, Toronto, Florida. So I've never been Florida. Orlando is probably the place I've been the longest in my life. So he got me a job working at the golf club. So I said to him, I think I want to play golf. After going to the range a couple of times, I liked it. I wasn't any good at it, but I kind of always been like the person who enjoys discomfort and challenge. It's almost natural to me. So, and I think it's an imperative message for anyone, right? Because if you're stuck where you're at, it's just because you're not in conflicting enough environments to actually grow, right? So it kind of just happened to me because we were always moving, and it didn't bother me that much, and my brother didn't like it. So every 2 years we had like new friends, new school, and so when you get used to being the first kid all the time, it's like, I think you just get some wisdom that way. So he takes me to the golf course, and, he was never one to like just start spending money on us. And I don't think any of our dads were like that, but he was extra cheap. And so I start picking the range and doing jobs to play golf. And then I get a lesson with Greg McHatton, probably a month into being there. And so I was the kid in the pro shop all day, just asking question after question after question after question. And so Greg took me under his wing. Now, Greg is at the hierarchy of the golfing machine. So to know the golfing machine, you have to be really deep into golf. But the golfing machine was written by a guy named Homer Kelly, and he was a self-taught engineer, and he wrote this almost impossible to read book where you're on page 10 and it says go to page 180, and when you're done with that it says go to page, and it's just, I can say I've read it, but I can't really say I understand it, and I'm not sure anyone can. But golf stood for geometric oriented linear force. That's how Homer Kelly saw it, right? And
hey,
so that's
can you repeat that?
The acronym for golf was geometric oriented linear force. And so, pretty much in my first lesson, everything was about all these angles. And so that's kind of the only way I knew it, because my dad played, but he was self-taught, and he never said a word to me. Like, how I treated people, yes, he would say a word. How I was in school, he would say a word. But it's when it came to what we chose to do, he didn't really care, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was what a perfect example to have when you're going to become a father. And so, I mean, that's so much of this, right? It's like when we look at this, it's, just to have the luck to even begin to tell the story, right? I mean, life is not fair. And I mean, where you were born and who you were born to is going to have a dramatic effect on how it turns out for you. And I wish that we all understood that a little bit better than we do, right? So he took me there. They put me under his wing. Then we moved back to Toronto. And I got decent by then. I was like a 13 handicap. And then in Toronto, my dad got me a junior membership at Cedar Brae Golf and Country Club in Toronto, which was like maybe $200 a year. And so they had Mike Nash, Steve Nash, Mike Nash, Dave Nash, and Gordy Burns. And they were three of the top 4 junior golfers in the country. So I'd never seen anyone this good before, right? And these kids the boys were older than me, and then Gordy was my exact age. And Gordy had, by that age, at around maybe 15, he beat Tiger Woods in a junior golf tournament. So this kid was like really, really good. The best in Canada by a mile. So I saw a whole level that I didn't even know existed. And so I just tagged along with them and played. And within one summer went from like a 13 to a 5 handicap.
Wow.
Just from the environment and just from being with them. And this was, sun up till sundown, like all the time, right? And then we moved to Vancouver. And in Vancouver, Jack McLaughlin, my dad had a corporate membership at a golf club. And so I worked there initially, and then he got me a junior membership, but there was a caveat. I had to take the bus every day. And so Vancouver's not a huge place, but from North Van to out in Shaughnessy by Burnaby is a 2-hour, but like, I'm talking about like, just like a bus route where it stops at every, right? And so I would leave at like 6 and I would listen. I would be in there till 8. So what's imperative about like those 2 summers is that is when I'm hit with everything Zeppelin, everything Hendrix, everything Pink Floyd, everything Bob Marley. And so I'm down that road on nonstop Walkman, right? And so I think that was a big point in my life too, because, they were really deep in what they were talking about. And I'm deep. So I'm like, oh, I need to listen to this. Right. And so there, Jack McLaughlin was the head pro, and Jack is on the Mount Rushmore of Canadian golf pros. So I've gone to Greg McHatton first, who's all about the angles and everything. And then I went to Jack McLaughlin, who is coaching tour players, all the good Canadian tour players. And he has me hitting balls out of a fairway bunker in bare feet, working on balance and rhythm. So those marry, and then my dad this time wasn't a promotion, this time was a demotion. And he told me many years after that they were going to promote him to vice president, but he knew he'd have to fire a lot of people that he came up with, so he decided to take a lesser job instead. Right? So that's the kind of guy he was, right?
Wow.
Or he's still alive.
Wow.
But he didn't tell me till a long time after that it was a demotion. So we went back to Toronto again, and my dad had asked Jack before we left, look, this kid is obviously so into this. It's all he does. It's all he talks about. Who in Toronto can be his mentor now? So he said, Ben Kern is a great friend of mine. And Ben is at the National, which is the National in Woodbridge, Ontario, is kind of like America's Pine Hills. Like it's the hardest golf course in the country, and it's one of the best golf courses in the country. So the membership are very competitive. And so that's on the other side of the city. So I would live in the summer with my aunt and uncle and then just ride my bike to the golf course every day. So Ben had this program where he took the top 10 players in the province, which I wasn't one. And then he would host them from 8 to 12 in the morning and just teach us. And then we'd have lunch, and then we had to go fix divots on the golf course. Right. And so that's another part that's interesting about like this whole move up, right? In the ability, like I think the problem with society right now is that it's the first time that mediocrity has been able to be successful, right? And I think AI is going to make like a ridiculous amount more millionaires than anything previous to this. But doing what? Doing what? And so what will happen is we'll have success without wisdom. And that's dangerous, right? When you have a society that doesn't have wisdom, then you're in trouble, right? So when I look back, nothing was ever given to me. I didn't sign a chit. I wasn't at a private course. I may have been, but I always had like a job. And Ben was on the Mount Rushmore of Canadian golf, but was one of the most famous because he was one of the first Canadians to play on the PGA Tour. He was best friends with Lee Trevino and just very famous and highly regarded as just this elegant, kind, unbelievable guy. So, now I'm 15 years of age, and Ben is adding Ben's adding avocados to my lunch. He's on the course. We used to play 9 holes and then get a hot dog, right? Like, what do you do? And so he would talk about sugar and sodium and all this shit. And we're like, what? Like, no one even is talking about anything like this. And Ben would make us like this, seeds and nuts to eat on the course and eat every 4 holes because of the fats and the proteins and how long we're like.
But he was a longevity guy before we had longevity.
And he was a god to me. I mean, like a god to me, like a deity to me. So Ben was always in cashmere sweaters and elegant, and he always looked perfect. Everything was perfect. And so it's funny when I look back at who I am now. So I think there is who you show up as. And I think knowing that we all have kids and how different they are, they're probably prepackaged a little bit, right? So we get some epigenetics from the last 15 to 20 generations from each of our families. My great-great-grandfather might say you are just like my sister because we've seen this with modern epigenetics that this is part of it. But then, I mean, the rest of it is environment. And, when you look at the opportunity that I had, which was a great opportunity, but then it wasn't just like, okay, now it's this much, right? Like where I've messed up with my kids is I didn't do enough of what my dad did. But that's probably just because I was too much into my own career at that time and didn't want to be that busy in that part, right? Admittedly so, like no one's perfect. And, when you go from the math of it all to the feel of it all to then the one who was the best player. And now, because Ben is so regarded, like all the PGA Tour players, when they come to Toronto, they come to the National. So now I'm sitting at the back of the range every day of every summer watching tour professionals hit balls on the range. And I'm just sitting on a wire basket with my headphones on. But then I'd completely switch to like Public Enemy, which were just more a sped up Bob Marley. They were kind of saying the same thing, weren't they? And,
it's still a middle finger to society
exactly.
or to authority.
Yeah, well, not society, so, but yeah.
Authority, yeah.
Authority.
There you go. And so I'm just back there all the time. And so I think that probably been hanging out with tour players since I was 15 years of age. So it's a species that I understand very deeply. And so I think when you look at every piece of the puzzle, I had the technique stuff early, then I had the rhythm and stuff early, and then I had this mentor, this person that I wanted to be like. I only started trying to be like myself, like at about, 24 when I stopped trying to be like Ben, right? But it was a good person to try and be like. So I think when you look at all that, I don't think I ever had said out loud to anyone I wanted to play on the PGA Tour. We had the chance to play the best course in Canada, and I would play it twice a week and sit on the range for 5 days a week. And my buddies would come to the range for 10 minutes and play 7 days a week. So, and they all went on to play pro golf. So, it's not, I've never stood on a range at the Masters. I've never stood anywhere and wished that was me, and never has been like that. So, but I became a good player, at times a very good player, but I was really not into the whole idea of the game. I was into trying to hit the perfect shot.
Yep.
And I still have yet to see one.
How'd it go trying to teach the boys golf? Did you ever try to imagine you on the range with the boys? Do they ever? Your kids, I mean.
We did that early, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. Kieran will listen to me. Quinn will, but Quinn doesn't like when something doesn't come quickly to him. So golf and Quinn are probably never going to have a good relationship, because golf is like the hardest thing on the planet. So I would take them, and they didn't want to play. So when I said to Kieran, like, you can't run on the green, he was like, why? He's like, I'm 5 years old. Why can I run? All I want to do is run, right? And then COVID hit. And so during, like, after the quarantine where COVID was still, depending on where you lived, it was at the phase it was in. And obviously here in Florida, there was really no rules by that point. So then I would take them to the range. And we tried that for like 3 days, and it didn't go very well. So if they choose to play golf in the future, they're both hot and heavy with lacrosse. They choose to play golf in the future, I know a lot of coaches who will be very good coaches for them, because it's not going to be me. It's not going to be me.
So
Sean, the definition of an expert?
What?
Someone you don't know, that someone had to come to you via an airplane.
Yeah, well, there you go. There you go.
They're under your roof. It doesn't matter
Definitely
what
not.
you know.
Exactly.
No.
So Sean, tell us what was, so you leave, at what point did you switch into full-blown coaching? Like what was that? And then how did that lead? Was Tiger your first big pro that you sort of broke onto the big stage, or like what was the journey from leaving Canada, or obviously college, but like connect those dots real quick?
Yeah, once I and this for a whole other discussion, because it's its own discussion, is, so I'm in Canada now, and I'm like a top 10 player in the province. So in America, it's a state, right? And universities are showing interest in me, but the Canadian dollar is 64 cents to the US dollar. My parents are hardly convinced that I'm going to make it 2 semesters. I love to read and I love to learn, but I just despise school. I just really struggled with school. I just was trying to accelerate whatever they were. Math never came that easy to me, but I never had any intention of being an accountant. So I was like, okay, so this is ridiculous. I'm super into this. Why can I not just study only this? Right. So for me, the way I think, it was difficult for me.
Yeah.
So my parents weren't taking out a loan because and I did my best to stay on academic probation for 10 semesters without getting kicked out. So I found the fine line there. But I ended up having to take a full scholarship to a university in Nashville, Tennessee State, which is historically Black university. So for the next 5 years, I mean, we were a Division I school and we were a decent golf team. But for the next 5 years, I was the only white kid who lived on campus. Actually, that's not true. Me and Jimmy Latta. Jimmy Latta was a linebacker at the time, but he was kind of already like a brother by then. So that was it. I was pretty much the only kid on campus. So I mean, what I endured the first year was pretty tricky. The second year was difficult, but not as bad. And then it started to change. And by the 5th year, the legend of White Sean it's still to this day a real thing. It's a real.
And White Sean also just got inducted into the Tennessee State Hall of Fame, correct? Didn't you just?
Yeah.
So what White Sean legend is now permanently.
Congratulations.
But the thing about, the thing for me is that, when you talk about what this podcast is about and the things that we discuss, and you talk about adversity, that's after the first week I was at school, my dad had always he gave me a plane ticket, and it was a one-way ticket that I could use at any time. And if you remember, this is back when the tickets were like carbon.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so, if you picture this is the ticket and there's where my fingers sit, there's no carbon by the end of the fucking first week. Because I'm just like this. And as he gave it to me, and he said to me, he said, "Hey, look, if you use this, I'll totally understand. But if you don't, everything else in the rest of your life will be easy." And it was. And the cool part too is like really important, right? As a coach, just even as a friend, just as a human being, right? Is the idea of empathy is for me to look at someone, whether I'm, on a train or a bus or on a plane, and see them behaving a certain way and try to imagine all the reasons that they're behaving like that, right? So I don't behave like that, but I got a lot of love in my life. I got a lot of purpose in my life. I got a lot of passions in my life, right? And then many, many years ago, I realized that the world isn't making me upset. My relationships aren't making me upset. What happens is when they're squeezing me, what's coming out of me is what lives inside of me. So that is a pivotal thing that people need to understand. It's like, if I go ahead and dump this out, what comes out of it, right? This juice. So the juice will say, yeah, but you squeezed me. But no, what came out was what's inside. And I think that, it's a pretty poignant, deep understanding to have. And I think that's why the world and our families and everything, they kind of let us know where we're at and how we react. Because, if I'm in a good mood, I can take any news. And if I'm in a bad mood, I can't handle good news. So it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's the imperative part is for me, like going to Tennessee State, very few people who look like me in this country can tell you that they know what it feels like to walk into a room and have no chance. And I had no chance, right? Because what am I at that moment? At that moment, I'm not Sean Foley. At that moment, I'm nothing. At that moment, I'm exactly what their hippocampus and I'm exactly what many neural regions in their brain think I am based on their environment and their education to that point. And within that brings it brings a fascinating freedom, because when you learn at 20 not to take anything personally, man, that's important. Like, right? Like if you can get to where you don't, I mean, obviously like, my wife or my brother or somebody could probably get to me, but I mean, that's maybe 3 people on a planet of 8 billion people, right? They've earned the right. And so when you realize that most of the time when people are talking about you, they're not even thinking about you, that is a heavy finding.
Yeah.
And so that's when I look back at all of
Very
it,
freeing.
I was just prepared.
So let's talk about that. So a lot of leadership coaches, a lot of marriage coaches, they talk a lot about how do we remain a citadel and not let what other people think about us affect us, right? A lot of people say that and say, you need to control your own thoughts, emotions, only by think for you, but you got to be able to control that and not let them influence you. Very stoic sort of idea that we talked about Marcus Aurelius a little earlier. How did you do that? How did at an early age? Because that is a very mature thing in your early 20s to say, I'm not going to worry about what people think of me.
Well, at first, understand, like I'm Canadian, so yeah, and then I grew up in the U.S., but I grew up in California. So, right, I mean, the U.S. is almost like 12 countries within itself, right? So different, couldn't be more different. I mean, if you bring somebody who's never been to the U.S. and you stop in New York for 2 days, and then you go to Jackson, Mississippi, and then you go to Montana, and then you go to L.A., it's like, is this the same place, right? It's very, very diverse. It's so diverse, and so I think for me, like, I'm just this Canadian kid, right? Like we've been ranked the kindest people for like 50 decades. So I was down there, and then I was already very, very into hip hop, so I thought I was cool, right? But I still looked the same I look right now, wearing the same type of shirts, and was a golfer, but just very hip hop. And it was pretty biting, like the shit that was said to me initially. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, none of that's you, right? So then I started to really like read a lot and think a lot about it. And, I read William James. I went through Freud. I looked at a bunch of different stuff, just trying to understand it. And then I just realized after that, one day I was in my room and one of the guys said to me, you know what, White Sean, you're not as bad as I thought you were. And that's when it just hit. It was like, well, dude, the only reason you didn't like me is because you thought I was bad. So I had to hang in there to show them like, yo, this is actually who I am. And what ended up occurring is like the fourth and fifth year, I wrote in the school newspaper. We had about 16,000 students at Tennessee State. A lot of players to the NBA, a lot of players to the NFL. I know quite a few of them that I met over those years. And so I started writing as anonymous. And if you go back and read some of those right now, you would have thought Louis Farrakhan wrote that stuff. I started to study. I minored in Black political thought. I studied Africana studies. I got really, really heavy in the struggle of what occurred, which is why, at times today, I'm like just very offended at the things I hear, because it's like, guys, you don't understand the depth of what this was. But no one who really, maybe Tim Weiss knows what I know. There's not many, you know what I mean? So I think so many people are good people, but we don't realize that so many times we're reacting to the world just from the process of neural circuits and neurons. So I think also another thing that helps me with the personal part is that how often are people projecting when they're giving you a hard time, right? That's a lot. That happens a lot. Okay. So you've triggered something in them, but remember, it's them again. It's in them. So you can't, once you realize it's you, then you now know. So if I'm taking it personally, that's still me. Like when they're squeezing me, this is still coming out. Why is this still coming out? So decades of meditation, 1 billion books, so many brilliant mentors, and you just keep working at it and keep working at it. But when I really started to get into the brain, when I started coaching, and it's a lot easier to study the brain now than it was 25 years ago because the technology is so much better. Once I started to get in the brain, I could start to separate, like, okay, you have to separate John from John's brain. Okay? John's brain still holds all the trauma, everything. It's still in there. And so once in a while, tired, dehydrated, fatigued, not sleeping well, it's like, oh shit, that's 18-year-old John just came out. Because it's still there. So I think that gives you more peace that people aren't really doing it on purpose. A lot of times when people are being assholes, they don't want to be. This is just where they're at. And so I think that that's really important with coaching, is the amount of time I sit there with a player and I find out everything about, by the time they come to me, I know where they play junior golf. I talk to their original coach, if they're still alive, spoke to their high school golf coach, spoke to their college golf coach, and learned everything about them to see like, okay, so between this time as they were becoming one of the best players, then what happened in between when I'm seeing them? And so I think that people just, we're a very, very self-interested species, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a big part of survival. Like if I don't take care of myself, I don't know who else I can take care of. So, the self-interest, people love to know when people like when people know about them. And I think when you look at it all that way and you see kind of how they came up, it gives you a deep empathy of understanding. And then even look, I've got players who, I've had Spanish players, I've had English players, I've had Korean players, I've had Chinese players. So I deeply invest myself into the cultures and kind of the archetypes of those cultures as well. And so we're all going to end up being unique, right? But we're not that unique. And so I think that, if you told me 30 years ago when I started coaching golf that I was going to look into archetypes of cultures to help people become better golfers, I'd be like, why would I know that?
Right.
I just didn't know that it was important yet. So I think what brings me to, a guy asked me in a Q&A, what the key to success was. And it just came out of my mouth like I hadn't thought about it. And I said, I don't know. I think you got to be an expert at failure. And I never even, maybe I'd heard it in a song. I'm not even sure, but it just popped out. And as soon as I said it, I was like, ooh, I like that. That is exactly what it is. Right. So you're allowed to fail twice at the same thing. You're not allowed to fail 3 times at it. Right. So if I have a player who fails 3 times at the same thing, the next discussion is, you say you want to be great, but I don't think you do. Because if you did, you wouldn't continue to make the same mistake, right? So it's like you're making this mistake because you don't care as much as you think you do. So getting them, because look, we've all been told we want to be number one. I want to be the best in the world. People just say that because they think they're supposed to say that. But when you start saying that, you lay down seeds in the brain of anticipation and kind of call it like a long flint, like expectation. But, your work ethic has to match your goals, your presence, your attention, your intention. All these things have to be. So I've got players and, they say they want to be the best, whatever. And it's like, all right, well, your intention has to equal your attention. So your attention can't be on your phone for 6 hours a day. And you can't be playing Call of Duty. And you can't be like, how are you doing all this? Because I've been around the best players. And you know what? They got to force themselves to look present at a dinner amongst other people's, because they are thinking about golf right now. And if you think about John or what you do, Justin, there's very rarely that production or something like that's not been popping in John's head. He's an idea guy. So it's all like that. And I've been to dinner I remember with Jeff Rose one time, we're sitting with this group of guys at dinner and he's answering this question very eloquently. And then he just goes, and he just starts gripping a golf club. And he was just on robot. He was like, yes, I think if you do this, this, and this. And he's just right. And he did it. And I was like, hey, dude. And he's like, oh, sorry, guys. That's it.
That's where my mind goes to. That's awesome.
It's all he's thought about since he was 6 years old, right?
Yeah.
So I want to probe in on this a little bit. So if I can peel back the onion a bit. So when we think about sort of the way that you're getting through to players and coaching them within golf, within their mental game, their mental makeup, probably pervades even into their personal life.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. So I hear therapist, I hear psychologist, I hear organizational psychologist, because you're thinking about them within their ecosystem, their family, and all the interactions. You're doing a little bit of historian and social training, etc. That's fascinating. So tell us. So when you're kind of thinking about all those things, what are the key inspirations? You mentioned Freud. You mentioned who if you said, hey, here's my Mount Rushmore influences on me of how I coach.
I would say one of the influence would be hip hop. So not any particular MC, but right. And I sent John a playlist, so John knows what I mean by hip hop. Like, these guys aren't on the radio, right? These are like the Ray Charles of this stuff, right? So the art's too important for them to sell out to some label, right? So they find a way to make a nice living, but they're never going to sell out that art that they do, right? And I think a lot of artists struggle to sell their artwork, right? And most of the time they probably feel like they're not worthy of selling it. Right? It's not good enough yet. That's the gift and the curse of that high level art stuff. Is everyone loves it, and you look at it and you just see the mistakes, right?
And what's the inspiration of hip hop? So what is that?
Well, I just think that, I remember being like maybe 9 in the car with my dad, and he put on that song by Pink Floyd where Roger Waters, there's no music yet, and he says, Brezhnev took Afghanistan, Begin took Beirut, and Galtieri took the Union Jack, and Maggie over lunch one day sank a cruiser. And then it goes into like a low tone. And then he says, they call you overgrown infants. And so whenever I would hear that, I'm like, Dad, what does he mean by that? What does he mean by that? And then I remember around the same time hearing, was it the Logic song by Supertramp? Right? when I was young, I thought that life was so beautiful, so magical. And then they took me away and taught me how to be logical. Right. And I'm like, Dad, what is that? And so I think, and then Bob Marley comes along and completely blows my brain. And to this day, one of my tattoos is when I was 12, I remember I literally would come home from golf. And then my dad had a record player, and this age group will probably know this record player, right? And then he had boxes of albums, right? Boxes of albums. And so I would just take each album out. I mean, by the time I was 12, I'd heard everyone from Miles Davis to Coltrane to you name it, to Irish Gaelic music, but the whole span. And I saw this crazy album cover with this in yellow and green and red with this, this black guy with this long dreadlocks. And it was a Trenchtown Rock live concert by Bob Marley. So I put that on, boom. And I clicked it on, and the first song is Trenchtown Rock, right? One good thing about music is when it hits, you feel no pain. And I was done. I was like, I'm in. And so I might even skip school with a fake sickness to listen to the rest of all the stuff my mom had. My mom had all the reggae because my mom's West Indian. She's from Guyana. So that's not a stretch that it would be in my blood that I'd be into reggae and reggaeton and all that type of stuff. So that's what my mom listened to. So then I'm listening to Redemption Song, right? Where in the second verse, the first bar is emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind, right? Have no fear for atomic energy. None of them can stop the time. That just spoke to me. And I'm like, I said to my dad, what does that mean? And so I remember maybe a year later, he put a quote on my door. Man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. When you can answer the rest of this, then you will have figured it out. So I'm 15. I'm like, Dad, I got it. Society and the school system is the chains. He's like, nope. Right? Next time I'm like, you and Mom are the chains. Nope. The church is the chains. Nope. And so then as I kept thinking about it,
I have a guess, but I'm going to let you finish.
Yeah. And then this is kind of when this is around the time that the experimentation of flowers and funguses occur in my life. And then I said to my dad, man is born free, yet everywhere he's in chains, shackled to the confines of his own mind. And he just went, that's it. And so he was a very deep, deep man. But the funny thing about me is I could talk to the wall and I can get it to answer. My dad is like, when it comes out, you pay attention because it's not going to be many words and it's going to hit you like an anvil. And I think over time I'll
gravitate that.
Well, I don't know. I was going to say over time maybe I get better at that, but I don't think that I have to get better at it. That's just him. Yeah. I feel like I have too much to share to just be listening. Like I say to my mom, my mom would say, you got one mouth and two ears and all you do is talk nonstop, like verbal diarrhea, right? Verbal diarrhea. How good's that?
That's awesome.
And so I always said to her, Mom, I ain't learning anything with these years from these. I got things I want to tell you about. I've been thinking about. I need feedback. So peace and love to them because they must have just sat there from about 13 to 25 and went, this is a crapshoot on where this could end up.
So the music really led you toward
that's part of Mount Rushmore.
Yep. And it really led you to your only constraints, the only chains are yourself and your own mind.
And then just as John can attest to, I played some songs for him. And, like Bob Dylan and Neil Young were really dope. They're not even close to the thinkers or writers that these guys are. This is a different level of writing. And the thing I really appreciate about it is you can tell the mastery in it, because to get to be really good at this is just something you got to do all the time, every day. But then you look at the neighborhoods that these guys come from, and the fact that they came from where they came from, in the environments they came from, went to the schools they came from, and came up with this understanding. I shouldn't be as surprised. If you met my mom and dad, I'd be way less surprising to you. You'd be like, oh yeah, I get it, right? I mean, how many times do you have a kid come over, John, who's not a nice kid, and then you meet his parents and they're the kindest people in the neighborhood? That's kind of rare, right? So
Agree.
not to judge a kid because a kid's just in the becoming stage anyways,
but
but
still,
you know what
yeah.
I mean, right? And so, yeah, I think that the music for me, that was just is a huge part of it. And a lot of them, like when I was 21, 22 and kind of started going into my career, that's when I first heard them too. And what's really cool is now to meet them, like I met most of them now 15, 20 years later. And we literally went the same way. And it's been amazing to meet a lot of them and let them know, what they really did for me. They're real philosophers, like heavy philosophers.
Yeah.
And then I always loved Justin. I always loved jazz. So the best hip hop is pretty much over snare drums, violins, and horns, right? So it was kind of the whole fusion. And this is at a time when, all my buddies are into Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. Those guys are amazing and I love listening to them, but I just wouldn't play them over what I was listening to, right? And they were basically the same thing from their own culture.
Right.
It was called alternative rock, right? Because they're like, yo, what is up with the system?
Yeah.
Same
grunge coming out of the Northwest, man.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
And so then probably the other three on Mount Rushmore, say, like I wouldn't count my dad, even though he'd be there. But these are just like not your dad influences.
No, but we should put your dad. Let's say we have we have five.
Well, I think old Trumpy might put like the fifth guy up there. So if we can move this to 5 from 4. So I would say hip hop. I would say Mother Teresa. I might have studied more about Mother Teresa than anyone on this planet. What I loved about her was she's the ultimate expression of a Christian who lived as Jesus did. Okay. We throw that word around a lot in North America, but it's a way different meaning than how I see what it means. Like IAN in Latin is like, so Christ like. Okay. So not perfect, but damn, pretty close. And so she washed the feet of the poor. She lived with them. She denounced materialism. I'm not going to denounce materialism, but that was, I don't think I can be that and then be this. So, right. And then a book that was published years ago was all of her letters to the Pope when she was deeply questioning the existence of God at all, because she was seeing such suffering. So to see someone who is almost the most piously faithful question her faith more than anyone else was pretty heavy, right? So there's so much to take out of that. But kindness and love. My mom and dad would tell you, John, like since I was a little boy, I would have fits when I would see homeless people.
Yeah.
I was just like that. My brother is still got a great heart, but I was just like that. And so who knows what happened in the last vestibule? I don't know. So, but my parents were always very loving and accepting and taught us all that stuff, right? Like, I remember using the word, I remember, what was I, 13 at the dinner table, and I had called my brother a fag, and my dad was the first time he ever hit me. He reached across the table and slapped me. I was 13. That was 1987, boys. That's way back, right? Yep. So I was very fortunate to have a dad like that, like very fortunate to have a dad like that.
And words matter. Intent matters.
Oh, of course, and I was just a kid, and I'm like, yeah, you're and my dad was like, no, we don't. You could say asshole, you can't say that.
Yeah.
Right. And so, my dad had a library with all these books, and so I'd just be reading, and for me, for sure. So hip hop, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela is definitely on there. And probably the fourth be a tricky one, but I'll probably go with Malcolm X.
Okay. It's also about Mandela, the suffering and the optimism that he maintained going through captivity.
Just unbelievable. Like there's so much to it, right? Like it's just like anyone who hasn't read Long Walk to Freedom, like if you must read this book. It is, to me, it's just an imperative story, and it's a crazy, crazy, crazy story. And just that he found at the end that when he said they asked him, so he had kind of like bro hugged FW de Klerk on the stage after being in jail for like 27 years. And he was going to become the president. And the ANC got very upset at him that that the guy who put him in jail, that he was this way. And he said to them, look, I'm paraphrasing, but along the lines of, you will never know how hard that was for me, but I knew I had to do it for the country. Okay. And then when they asked him how he was able to keep his humanity, he said two things: the hatred that I had for the prison guards and apartheid. If I was to kill them, I could just build a grave right next to theirs because the hatred was going to kill me. And so somewhere along the way, I learned that everyone is doing their best from their own level of understanding. And that, to me, is just one of the heaviest things I've ever read or heard.
Yeah.
Everyone, imagine if you got to the point that you would literally automatically out in society think that every single thing that you saw was someone doing their best from their own level of understanding. So if you don't like what you're seeing, if you want to be part of the solution, then you got to take your time and stop and help them with their understanding. Like, but to judge them or to be a certain way. So his whole discussions about like resentment and all these different things, that was huge for me too. And then Malcolm X, I just think that if he had been able to live a long life, he probably would have ended up being celebrated as one of the greatest Americans ever. I mean, that was just what a regal king that Malcolm X was to me. And once again, as I got into Black political thought, there wasn't much to read about these people.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why we certainly shouldn't take it out now, because it was hardly in there in the first place. And, and it is the great story of America. And that's one of the great parts about America. And, Malcolm said, I'm for the truth no matter who's telling it, and I'm against injustice no matter who it's against. So that's very fitting right now with meritocracy and that whole idea. And so these guys were way ahead of their age. And I just think that they were such special people because in a time where they didn't even have the right to vote, I mean, they became world known and worldwide. And I mean, you talk about being committed to a golf shot. You talk about being committed to your job. I mean, how about you're so committed that you're okay with dying? Like that's what they said to Marley when he was shot. And they said, are you concerned at that time in Jamaica, there was the PLP and the JMP, the Jamaican National Party, Jamaican Liberation Party and the People's National Party. And that was Michael Manley and then Edward Siega. And Siega was a white Jamaican who was really a seed of the CIA. And so they had this issue. Then Bob was shot, and then he did a Smile Jamaica tour where he brought the two leaders together on the stage to hold hands. And there's a crazy picture when he did it. I'm sure you've seen it, John, but as soon as their hands touched on a clear night in Jamaica, there's a massive lightning bolt in the distance. Right. I'm just saying, like we are energy, you know what I mean? This whole thing is energy. And so when they asked Bob about why he risked his life going up there again, he said, I don't know, man, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And I just think that those things, like if I can get a player to get over a ball and just say, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees, the acceptance of I'm going to try and be great. And if I'm not, I'm okay with that because I did what I set out to do. Look, you don't have control of your brain. You don't have control of your thoughts. You certainly don't have control of involuntary muscle movements. In golf, it doesn't take much of an involuntary movement for you to hit it off the planet.
Yeah.
And so, if you ask Michael Kim, who's a player I've worked with now for 4 years, and Michael was the top amateur in the world, got on tour, kind of went the wrong way, lost his card, then came to me. And this year we played in all 4 majors, and he's back to being one of the best players in the world, or at least top 50, which is, I mean, how many people do you know are top 50 in the world of what they do? And that was one of our big moments on the Korn Ferry Tour was, hey, Michael, Bob Marley said this, bro, and this needs to be it. And that's how I would leave every text. Hashtag die on my feet versus living on my knees. And so all that stuff, when Justin was explaining, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this. It's a lot. It's pretty chaotic in my head, and it's kind of a puzzle, and there's all these pieces. But I think being a coach is that you got to have such a treasure trove of information, and you're never really overthinking it, right? You can't overthink. It's like the players can't overthink it. like Chief Justice Roberts can't overthink it. You got to be reacting from what it is that you already have gained and And I I think that that's imperative because look, I mean, most of these guys now are what, 25, 26. And when I started coaching, I started at the John Jacobs Golf Schools in Nashville. And then I worked for them in Florida, but I had to probably there's a 10-year window there where I waited tables and coached golf and was a personal trainer. So I mean, there's so much luck, as we all know, in being successful. But I'll tell you what, I definitely put myself at least at the top of the list for the universe to say, all right, this dude could probably deserve a break, right? Like he's busting his ass. I was super going for it, right? And just trying to manifest it. When I was waiting tables, I told every single person what I was going to do with my career. And they're all like, can I get another beer? And good luck with that, bud, right?
I love that. We talk about that in some of our companies, and we're struggling with a couple things, and as you know, we talk about that we got to manifest this. We've got to visualize it. We got to see it, lean into it, and really want this.
But
And
but there's the absence. There's just an absence of difficulty. Like I got this toothbrush. It's a nice toothbrush. The one now that's on TV does 3 times the job in twice as fast. Like the whole goal of life is to have things that make life better, but we already have these things that make life better. And now it's like, okay, so here's my new toothbrush. It's so I think from a toughness standpoint, the difficulty I think that we're going to face as a country, especially as we go into AI, is there's going to be a lot of young men without work. And that the trick with that is young men and young women, but I feel like it potentially is going to affect the men harder because a lot of the positions I've seen that are going to go away. So the problem is we have a pretty privileged society. If you look at the standards of the world, right? America, that song I sent you.
Epic. I am going to send Justin that playlist. That song I probably listened to 50 times. It's
right now. I have plenty of his stuff, and he has a lot of criticisms too. But that point is that's all true as well, right? So we can't forget,
yeah.
the roads are paved, the roads are paved, the shower has hot water, we have drinking fountains. It's pretty good.
But it's hard to appreciate that if you don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah.
Well, I think that
and there's your passport, like traveling and learning and being around different people and putting your ear to the ground.
So on tour, then Kate and I left. My visa ran out in the U.S., my student visa, so I had to go back to Canada. And then I started coaching in '99 in Canada. And then, I was kind of once again like a tribe of one because in Canada, my ambition was a bit threatening to people. Canadians aren't like that, right? Like Canadians want to go to the Kentucky Derby and bet on the horse after the race is over, right? So in America, they'll lift you up and they'll be there for you. And then they'll just literally move and watch you drop as fast as you can. And then they might lift you up again, right? But in Canada, when you're like, hey, I'm going to be this one day. And they're like, yeah, okay, bud, good luck with that. Like, you're Canadian, bro. How are you going to do that? So there's a little bit of that. But because I was formalized or normalized in California, right? I mean, I'm between 7 and 13 in California when it's becoming the 4th largest economy in the world. I mean, I thought this is it. This is the best place I've ever been. And so I brought that mentality back to Canada. And so I was quite aggressive with how I went about my coaching and building my business and doing all of that. And then in '06, after building a great business, getting married to Kate in 2004, Kate was my sugar mama. She paid off my school loans. Kate was probably making triple what I was making, John.
Really?
So I'd like to, you know what? I'd like to write a book, so maybe we'll do that all over again. And so, Kate was in IT doing her thing, and, we would come together, and Kate's been, none of this is possible without her. And, there's the happy wife, happy life. And then there's, as my mom says, better wife, better life. Right.
Yeah.
And that is so true. And so I've been able to travel the world for 19 years without ever being concerned once if everything at home is okay. And that kind of freedom is really, really important, at least for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can be in my world and have someone who's super dependent
No.
on what you do. So we moved here in 2006. We moved across the street from where John and I lived to some apartments. And, I've grown up reading Napoleon Hill and Neville Goddard. I got a membership at Gold's Gym to work out at the same time that Tiger Woods did at 5:30 every morning. Applied for jobs at Alworth and all that. Never got a job there, but I just knew I needed one tour player. I just need one guy to give me a shot. And then 3 months into being down here with no business and no salary, people started calling and going, "What do you think? Like, is this a good idea, what you've done and all that?" And probably about the only time that I had doubt in the decision, I'd heard the doubt and I just said, okay, look, we're not going to ever think like that again, right? Like my plan B is plan A, like always has been. And the next day I'm driving to the golf course. So I got 400 or 500 people on the waiting list in Toronto to pay me $150 for a lesson. And now I'm down here at Orange County National here in Orange, down where John and I live. And I'm giving free 30-minute lessons to people trying to strum up business. And I'm on the way to the course to do that day, and my phone rings, and it's a 404 number. And I picked up the phone, and on the other line said, "Is this Sean Foley?" I said, "It is." He said, "Hey, Sean, it's Stephen Ames." And Stephen Ames he's a guy from Trinidad and Tobago, but is a Canadian citizen and is been a world-class player for 20 years on the PGA Tour in Europe, and huge to me as a golfer, huge name. And he said, I went to a chiropractor back in Toronto. That's Craig Davies, John.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Even that's the story of the two of us, John, is its own other thing. And so he said that you and him used to do seminars for chiropractors and massage therapists in the winter. And the fact is, we were dead broke trying to figure out how to make money. So I took what I knew about the golf swing. He took what he knew about the body. And then we put on these seminars. I think if I saw the seminar right now, I might stab myself in the head. But we thought we were good anyways, And so he saw Craig and got treated. And then Craig said, "Hey, my buddy," he's like, "Bro, my buddy is down in Florida. I'm about to go down there." So Steven called me. And said, Craig said, "You know a lot about the back, and my back is bad." So he came down the next week for 3 days. At the end of the 3 days, he said he liked it. He wrote me a check for my expenses the next year, told me what he would pay me. And I didn't know what that meant because I didn't know what anyone was getting paid. I come to find out that he was doing something very, very nice for me, which I then made a standard, which has now become the average standard on the PGA Tour for coaches. So by accident disrupted how coaches were getting paid. And that's the whole thing, it's like when people are like, I'm a disruptor, I'm like, no, the most disruptive people had no intention of disruption. It's not like an intentful thing, right? And so from Steven said, "Give me a year before you work with anybody else. I think you're magic and you're special and you're going to be." And then after a year, Sean O'Hare came. Sean and I went from like maybe 80th to 10th in the world rankings pretty quickly. And then Hunter Mahan, who was already one of the great Americans of his generation. So that's like a gift. That's like, that's like someone telling you in 1998 that they bought you 1,000 shares in Apple.
Yep.
Like you can't go wrong. There might be some ups and downs, but the trend is going to look like this. So, with Hunter and then Justin Rose came along. And then from those three, they'd all improved so much that when I first spoke to Tiger, I knew Tiger a little bit, but the first time I spoke to him on the phone, he said, "I just want to compliment you. I've never seen a coach take 3 good players and help them become great." And I remember to this day, it's the greatest compliment I've ever got. But really what we all did, the three of them and me, we all put each other on the map. We were all so hungry and just, carnivorous about this thing. And we were all just going as hard as we could at the same time. And they were all world-class players when they were 17. So that's around the advent 2009 when I buy this $35,000 box called a TrackMan. which you've seen, Justin. That's the orange box you see at tour events. It goes behind the ball. And then when the ball is hit, it's got 2 radars in it. So it reads the ball flight. And then the algorithms, which are pretty dialed in at this point, they tell me what was going on at impact with loft and orientation of face. And this just so many numbers that are really important because, I mean, basically, this is like an MRI for the golf swing.
Right.
Okay. But I'm the first person to use it at a time when everyone is saying, hey, dude, this is a game of feel. And I'm like, but it's certainly not. You know, it's so funny. I'm sitting here right now. My 17-year-old son is parked in the driveway and he could easily get out and open the garage. And he's laying on the horn because he sees me in the office. How good is it? Huh? How good is it? Huh? It's so good. I mean, unbelievable. Hey? Holy moly. Sorry. So just had to share that with you. If anyone's been concerned or wondering if your kids are just unique, they're not. They're all the same. They're just the best when they go to your friend's house, but not at your own. So
I don't think anything truer has been said this year than that.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Not that when they go to friend's house, you get all these compliments about your kids, and you're like, "Are we talking about the same kid that lives in my?"
Yeah, my dad said, "Remember, son, that it's always important to understand that it's almost an honor that that's the case because they get to take out all their shit on you because they know that you love them." And I said, "Yeah, that's pretty deep, but it's annoying."
Or they're just Eddie Haskell when they get on the road. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then came Tiger, and that was a whirlwind. I thought I was ready for it. You can't be ready for it. You can train your whole life and do everything, but you're just not ready. You're not ready to go to a bar one night and walk in and sit down. And then the next night you walk in, you look on the TV and you see yourself standing next to basically one of your heroes. And then everyone looks over and then you're like, all right, so it looks like I'm ordering room service for the next 3 years. So the thing is, for me, I'm a bit of a social butterfly. I'm kind of tight and private with like who I bring in, but I have love for like everybody. And I love to speak to people. And so that was, you know, I think when we see the dream that we have, we see the dream. We don't see the repercussions of the dream. So, a lot of guys dream to being a CEO, got to a CEO and then realized like, oh my gosh, I don't think I want to do this. And I never felt like that, but I just remember thinking like, wow, this is so not about golf. Like this is so not, what are you going to teach Tiger Woods? Honestly, what are you going to teach Tiger Woods? Like, does somebody sit with Usain Bolt and say you need to lift your leg up? No, you teach Usain Bolt about sprinting, right?
Well,
so I think I missed my opportunity with him, whereas I should have just went all in on the human side. And I can't not do that. That's just what I do. But I still think at that point, I was still like loving my own bullshit and trying to think that the way that I thought about the golf swing, he hadn't really understood yet. And so this is going to be the next time that he's amazing, which was just ridiculous. But I mean, I look back and, people ask if I have any regrets. I don't think you can have a regret when you were doing your best from your own level of understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Would I love to go back now? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Would it have been any different? I'm not sure. I mean, Tiger had went from pretty much being deified to a punchline overnight. And, we all know countless people who have got divorces, and that's not easy when no one knows. Let alone you now come back to the golf course. You used to walk on the range and you knew what everybody knew. You knew that they knew that you knew that they knew that you were beating them. We all knew that. Everyone in the gallery knew he was going to win. Now you come out and you're probably thinking, I wonder what they think now.
Yeah.
And then that's just a different can of worms. And so I think a lot of us have probably learned that earlier than at 35. But hey, look, what an unbelievable honor. And the guy, I always tried to get everyone to understand how misinterpreted that he is. He does so many things behind closed doors. He's just not one of these people who do things for people and bring cameras, right? I mean, this guy's probably done 100 Make-A-Wish calls before a kid's gone in for life-saving surgery. I mean, just tell him to hang in there. You can do it. I'll be thinking about, I mean, you understand to have the power to do that and then do that and just what that could have meant, you know? I mean, you get into the depth of consciousness and you get into that whole discussion. It's like, how many kids actually made it through a surgery because their pep talk from their Tiger Woods before they went in there?
Because they believed they could get through it because
you just don't know.
Because he inspired. Yeah.
Yeah. So he, you know, but he's also, you know, like all of them, these are carnivores. These are apex predators. And so we can't expect them, like, you're not supposed to be that and Mother Teresa. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they are one, but they project both and then they're stuck.
Yeah. Oh, that's well said.
What was the, like, when you think of those moments, it's always interesting hanging out with you and just listening to how you talk. But like, if you think of those moments, I have to imagine you were more psychologist than swing coach in most of the cases, right? That you really helped contribute. When you think about your contribution to some of these incredible, you know, golfers, like, is that true? Like,
oh, they all tell you that.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. They now, I had a couple kids that I started coaching when they were 11, and one made to the PGA Tour, and he would tell you I was all those things because I taught him how to grip it, I taught him how to swing. But you got to understand, almost every player I've ever had on the PGA Tour has been on the PGA Tour when I met them. So they're already, like, they're world class, right?
Yeah.
So just based off of the neuroscience of what they do, they're just going to feel way further off than they are. Like, no one is as bad a place as they think they are. And so it's kind of just looking at, and when they come and I'll say, what are you doing? And I'm doing this. And a lot of times it comes off the back of, they changed equipment and the equipment changed their movement and they left the equipment company. And, you know, they're like, we all have drama, right? And so there's so many different things going on. You know, you got young players out there who are traveling with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. They've never have, I mean, their whole life they were on a golf course by themselves. And now they're trying to manage all this extra stuff. And so, I mean, that's, once again, no matter what you do, adversity is going to approach.
Yeah.
The key, like I try to teach myself and speak to, because really a lot of what I'm teaching people is what I learned myself through meditation, through therapy, through all that. And I wasn't even going to therapy because I had problems. I wanted to learn more about it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, you know, when you get a knot in your neck, you go get a massage and then you go to a therapist and basically they just say back to you and what you said in your voice, then you realize how dumb it sounded. And so they're not really doing anything. You probably haven't told anyone yet, right? So that's a good place to start. And I think that it's just kind of like, go and read John Wooden. I mean, guy was a philosopher, right?
He was.
Nick Saban is a philosopher.
He's an absolute philosopher, psychologist. Right.
And so, but you know, he's had a million failures himself. And, you know, we see Nick Saban and learn about Nick Saban when he's kind of at Alabama and they're winning all the time, but we don't see his first job and his second job and his third job and his fourth job, fifth job, right? So he's probably just teaching them what have been so definitive in his own life. Like, I just don't think we're different. I mean, we can have different labels and we can have different names and cultures, but I mean, I think the biggest difference in human beings is how they spice chicken. I don't really think it's that different.
Yeah.
Right? You can sit in the airport in Tokyo and know without speaking the language if that guy's in trouble from his wife. It's instant.
You know, it was interesting. You mentioned Saban. I love Wooden, Krzyzewski, Knight, all people that at different parts of my life inspired me. My grandfather was a coach, a football coach, basketball coach. And you look at it, that's really how I think we approach business and learning. And I think I love what you said about, hey, I've taught myself this because I'm exploring it. And if I could break it down for me, I could break it down for someone else. What was really interesting is hearing Coach Saban talk about how he became a better human being to his players at Michigan State. he spent some time really evaluating how he was treating them and became a better person, became more empathetic, really could put himself in their shoes and started discovering the psychology of performance. And, you talk a lot about, or you hear him talk a lot about process, right? And focus on your process. Don't look at the outcome, at the score. And particularly when you're having success, guarding against complacency. And maybe you can relate to that and talk about that with some of your players or some of your coaching.
Yeah, I think like with Saban too, one thing I heard that he does is for many years when he was at Alabama, he would be bringing in thought leaders from high school football who were creating new offenses, like as they were moving the game ahead. And so he would have them come in, pay them a consulting fee, even though he would define himself as old school. I'm an old school coach, but I use modern technology because why would I? Somebody is looking at me and they're telling me, okay, you're going to be a piece of the puzzle to me achieving my dreams, right? And I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to keep guessing. Why are you doing that? Like, who's still doing that? And there's still people doing it. And, it doesn't mean when I speak to them that I use any scientific terms. I don't use any, but I need to know what all that is. And so just the humility that he had to bring these guys in where they're all sitting there going, I can't believe I'm explaining football to Nick Saban. But he's just looking for an edge. If this guy gives him one idea that ends up being a route that wins the national, who knows, right? So just that kind of openness, even though he's the GOAT, so to speak, I don't think anyone who is really probably refers to himself that way. But they asked John Wooden one time about why he doesn't yell, right, in practice. And he said, I always thought it was important to raise my words instead of raising my voice.
That's awesome.
That's heavy. That's so heavy. Yeah. That's heavy, right? So you got a player, you want to talk to him. I'll tell you what, if you get really close to him and you start to whisper and he goes, what was that? And you whisper a little louder, I promise you that is going to engage his thought process way more than if you're yelling at him from 5 feet away. Because I don't know about you guys, but as soon as someone starts yelling at me, I pretty much probably turn off. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It really depends on the individual. Some people you have to yell at. Some people you just have to give them a look. My experience going up through sports and even in business, people are different.
Look, we're scientifically. I mean, if you're speaking to an evolutionary biologist, we are basically evolved primates with a prefrontal cortex that can access the ideas of a creator. That's about the separation. So having to rub backs and be sweet all the time, like, Mama Chimp, the baby goes by the tree and Mama Chimp goes, whatever chimp talk is. And the baby doesn't come over. She does it again. Baby doesn't come over. Then she goes over and slaps him in the head because she said to him, hey, there's some big ass ants over there. They're going to bite you and it's going to hurt. And so I think we should bring back the odd little boom, right?
Yeah, 100%. Hey, I saw a clip on, I don't know.
Righteous primates.
I don't know if you follow Bobby Knight at all. I grew up in Indiana, and Coach Knight did a lot of talking. But one of his great ones was, it's here's how we motivate our people. Player plays bad, pull player out of game. Player butt hits bench triggers butt, sends message to head to play better. And he's like, it's an amazing reward system.
Unfortunately, the problem with Coach Knight is that there's just way too many highlights of him throwing chairs and things. So if I had a little time with Coach Knight, I would have given him my, you see this purple juice in here, bro?
When the ref
squeezed you,
and he was incredibly bright. He had a lot of gray matter, very bright, and get frustrated if people didn't go as fast as he did. But we could build you to maybe you'd be Nick Saban.
I could, because I'm sure he's torn a strip or two, right? But I think there's a way to do it. I find like with the younger players, it's like if I call these kids, they never pick up the phone. If I DM them, instant.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So I don't even text them. I'm going to get them on DM faster than I'm going to get them on text.
How funny is that? Having kids make phone calls nowadays, that's a whole episode in itself. The avoidance of phone calls. Holy cow.
Well, but this is, but so but this is the thing, right? So we're not communicating that way. We're walking around all day like this. Um, yeah, I think that it's being taken advantage of, that we're literally just not interacting with one another, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous time as it relates to that. It's almost like three trains meeting at the same station and arriving at the same time. And it's like, if we can get them to veer offline for a little bit, it might be helpful. But I think you can only do what you can do. And I think that's why, John, with me, you know, I'm in 7-Eleven the other day and there's no one in there. And I get in there. Where was I? New York? I forget. And I walked in there and I said to the lady, I said, "Hey, how you doing?" She's like, "Man, same shit, different day." And I was like, "Can I explain to you what I think that means?" And she's like, "Huh?" And I said, "Same shit, different day. I'm sure you say it 1,000 times a day. And then I'm sure you're surprised sometimes that things stay the same." And so she's paying attention. And she was like, and she was great. She was very, very cool. She had nice energy about her. And this was 30 minutes later, I'm done. And I go outside and my wife's like, "Where have you been?" I said, "I was speaking to this lady in 11." She's like, "Oh,
Of course you were.
right."
Hates rolling her eyes.
I go to the gym for an hour and it takes me 3 hours. But I think though too, a therapist told me once that he gives the advice that he needs to hear the most. Once again, that brings us back to the fact that we're, one, we're not divided. Two, a particle physicist would argue that we're not even separate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is timely, and I know we could probably spend another 3 hours, but and God, this is a great hang, by the way. I appreciate you coming along. So we're from a time standpoint, we've had another school shooting in Colorado. We've had a issue in Charlotte, another violent issue. Obviously, the murder of Charlie Kirk, etc. What are your thoughts, without getting political? How do we as a society, how do we bring the temperature down and come back to humanity and discourse with respect, etc.? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think the way I see it is that, like, I've been in the last 3 months, I've been to Boston, I've been to New York, I've been to Toronto, I've been to Ireland, I've been to Georgia, I've been to Texas, I've been to LA, I've been to Minnesota, North Carolina. Okay. All I saw no MAGA extremists. I saw no radical left lunatics. I saw no violent Islamic people. I think I might have saw 2 transgender people, but I'm not sure. I couldn't tell. So, this thing that we're speaking on right now is the end of our existence if we're not careful. Because everywhere I went, I saw people who didn't want to disappoint their dad, loved their mom, loved their kids, wanted to be better for their wife, went to the gym, liked Tom Cruise movies, liked ice cream, liked Chardonnay, liked Indian food, liked Chipotle. They're all the same. Now, if I spent 2 months where all I did was sit on my couch and just looked at my phone, and then you're looking at how neurons work, like if you ever want to just, to chat GPT or whatever, Google, whatever you use, just type in, what is the effect of propaganda? What is the scientific effect of propaganda on the human brain? It's just easy. It's easy. It's wired to be this way.
Yeah.
It's already wired to be this way. So look, you, John, me, Leo, whoever, were a tribe 3,000 years ago. When another tribe came up, we didn't hang out with them. We didn't at all, right? We weren't sharing our food. We weren't doing any of this. So we've been, as we had more fat and more protein added to our diet, our brain started to expand. And this is where it comes. So the first time any kind of religion is mentioned is 8,000 years ago in India with Hinduism, right? So as we expanded, we have the ability to think like this, and then this is what you have. But when you look at the amount of screen time that people have, and I keep going back to I listened to this eerie thing by Scott Galloway, who's really, really deep and impressive to listen to. And it was about boys. And
was this a book or was this a podcast?
he was on a pad. I think he was on a podcast. Okay. Yeah, I believe it was.
I've read his book, The Big Four. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, he's super clever, like really clever. I love listening to him, right? And not many people I love listening to, but I really enjoy listening. I learn every time I listen to him. And so, you look at it this way where as soon as something happens, it's blamed on them. And then as you dig a little more, you're like, man, is this blamed on someone who was even more of them than them? And then you look at all the things that are being removed from government websites and these types of ideas. And this begins with Biden anyways. It's not a Biden or a Trump thing, right? I met George W. Bush. He's an awesome dude. Made a huge mistake going to Iraq. Probably not his fault. There's people who are more powerful than the president, okay? So if you study and you read and you know that politics is probably better referred to as politricks, and then you see it. And I think what is important is the unlearning process that we all have to take, So I was a kid. I went to Catholic school, right? I wanted to kind of unlearn that process. Okay, what was I told? What did I see? What made me feel good? What made me feel bad? What do I agree with? What do I disagree with? Okay, so there was that. And then I was taught history. And as I got older and I started reading other stuff, I'm like, man, that is not what I was told. Right? And so it goes from the first time that hatred really flourishes in the world is during Gutenberg's printing press. Well, how's this times 10 billion with phone? And so that's the problem with the algorithm as well is not just an algorithmic thing at all, because it's not. It's definitely a part of the problem, is that I can get everything I already agree with. And that's just what they're sending to me. Right? And so I get, if you type in what is the scientific effects of propaganda on the human brain, you will see that what happens as the hippocampus starts to get more laden with the same message, its ability for logic and rationale is cut in half. So it gets to the point that it's so assured that it's correct of its belief that it's almost impossible to trigger a different point of view. And that's what this is. And what's going on right now is nothing new. Look, I'm Canadian. If I had my own country, I wouldn't have guns. But every American I know who has a gun has never killed anyone. Not one person that I know, and everyone has one. And so it's yes. Is it a gun problem? Yes. Is it just only a gun problem? No. Okay. It's all parts. So if you want to look at a human being, and this is kind of how I look at a lot of things, then you listen to an epigeneticist. But the epigeneticists think that the behaviorist is full of it, right? Because he's a specialist.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at the human experience, you speak to a philosopher, you speak to a priest, you speak to a Buddhist monk, you speak to a psychologist, you speak to a clinical psychologist, you speak to a neuroscientist, you speak to an epigeneticist. Everyone in that spectrum all have a solution that's probably accurate, but it's got to be together. It's like what they did with, diversity and the test at Stanford years ago. They were looking at this study in diversity, right? Which wasn't just about handouts. This was pretty much academic at the beginning. And so they took all math teachers, all art teachers, all English teachers, and then they created questions that had about the same intellectual capacity, right? And then they took all Muslims, all Christians, all Sikhs, all Buddhists. Anyways, they do this with all this, right? And so when they make it a math teacher, a geography teacher, an English teacher, an art teacher, when they make it a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Sikh, an atheist, when the group was the most diverse, they came up with the right answer 78% more of the time. Because what we noticed is that when there wasn't the diversity, an alpha would always take over the discussion within groups that were alike. So the Christian would say, well, guys, this is true because life is like this. And the Buddhist would say, but is life like anything? And so they would get to this point where they're bouncing these ideas off of each other, which is getting more to a selective knowledge that gave them, the answer more often. So my point of traveling the country, I don't see any problems out there. I don't walk around afraid. I don't even think about it. Okay. It's not there. So as soon as this happened, it's this side. And then there's all this call for civil war. America's not into that. Are you kidding me? If that's keeping you up at night, then you're just not seeing it. No way. I'm looking in my neighborhood right now. And now, look, things can occur where we can have seismic shifts in some crazy thing and people can dramatically become way more primate than they are today. Okay? But I'm sorry, I don't see it. It's not supported in anything that I see. I hardly even see anyone being rude to themselves. So I think the point that I'm at is when you go out, there's three types of different people. There's cool people, there's indifferent people, and then there's people you would label an asshole. Okay? Well, in my world, none of them are cool because they're Democratic. None of them are assholes because they're Muslim. They just are cool or an asshole because they are. It's got nothing to do. So I think that's the problem too, is attacking the language and the labeling because words trigger things. And so growing up in Toronto, if you said to me, Muslim, I would think about all those pretty ladies in the hijabs who are the nicest people I've ever met. And I've been to the Middle East and they still are. But if you say to my buddy who's from Jersey, whose brother died in 9/11, he has a completely different feeling on that. But both of our feelings are been created by our experience. So here's the problem. What is going on with the phone? What is going on with mainstream media? What's going on with, right? What's going on with this? If a white guy's killed by a black cop, it's on Fox News for 10 days. And if a black guy's killed by a white cop, it's on CNN for 10 days, right? Rupert Murdoch, Ted Turner, all of those guys should be in jail for what they've done. And they've done it. It's been on purpose. Okay. This is some sinister, evil, ridiculous stuff that the 10 people who own all the attention and currency in the world right now are the same 10 people. And they're all standing on stage with the president. I mean, come on, guys. This ain't about right or left. That's a horizontal structure. Okay. The dangerous parts of the country, to call them right or left isn't even accurate. They're way beyond that. Okay. They're way beyond that. And they're not equal in numbers, but still, it's still just people who think like, hey, violence is the answer. Okay. Violence is the answer. And that doesn't come from watching Canadian kids they play as many gun games on video games. They watch as many movies with violence in it. It doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. It is very much a unique thing in America amongst first world countries that this occurs. But the further we get from seeing each other as the same, the further we get from seeing that it's like that, and then how many people who feel the way they do can have my experience to travel all around the country and come up with that idea and that answer. So what we have to do, people who have followings or people who people know about, they have to share this. They have to share this. Because to me, the horizontal is this versus this. And the vertical structure is, I love listening to this guy right now. I think he's in seminary, but he's running for the Senate. His name's James Tallarico. And he is a congressman in Texas now. He's a Democratic congressman. I don't really care about I don't even think of the word Democrat or Republican anymore. I just don't even know that. I know what that means, but that doesn't mean what it meant when I learned what they were, right?
Yep.
Like I did this cool thing with my dad the other day. And I said, hey, Dad, I'm thinking about doing this with people. And he's like, all right, what is it? And so I read this. And I said, would you say this is you? And he's like, absolutely. And I said, what have you always voted? He said, liberal. I said, well, that all comes from Edmund Burke from his thesis on conservatism. And then I said to my mom, hey, Mom, would you say, no, I didn't. I did this to a guy at the club, John. And I said, would you say you're this? He's like, damn right. And I said, that is from John Locke, the father of liberalism. I said, bro, you're a liberal and you don't even know it. And he took offense to that, but it was kind of funny. But my point is like what it is and what it's become. One of the main facets of Locke's liberalism was a small government. But if I turn on Fox today, they're going to say, well, obviously
Yeah.
the liberals that's not what it was. That's not how it started. The government under Biden was the exact same size that it was under Reagan. So I'm just that kind of guy. When I see something and it doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to try to locate it. But now when I try to locate certain things, they've been taken down in archives, and I'm like, what's that all about?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's always the most dark right before the sun rises, right? So hopefully
It's almost
hopefully we
morning.
can manifest a sunrise, and we don't have any room for violence in this world, and we need to listen more and be more empathetic, and
Yeah.
I think take issue by issue and really be respectful in how we talk about it. And it's hard. It's hard when the other side is getting really excited and name calling, etc.
See the thing though, I
I just think we're better than that. And
I just don't think it's about sides though, because I think that that one side versus the other, these are sides that are, if you go to the extreme of the right wing or extreme of the left wing, I've always said that I'm a moderate because I like to stand in the middle. And then as far as I can see in each direction, I can probably learn something. If I can't see past that direction, there's nothing to learn from that. Right. So I am conservative. I am liberal. I am Buddhist. I am Christian. If I look at all the stuff, I'm kind of all of it. And I think we all are. And I just think though, that when you get something coming to you over and over and over again, some of these chapters that I have in these books on the brain, when I read them, it's like, I can't unread that, because that kind of information is kind of what throttles my optimism a little bit, where I'm like, wow, this is just literally a computer program. And we could get to the point that we're so programmed,
yeah,
yeah. And I'm not sure that we're that far away, but like I said, if you look at how people are afraid and the discussions they have, and I'm worried, what if civil war starts? I'm like, guys, I've been around the country. Okay. If I never picked up my phone once or turned the TV on, I would think everything in America is going very well. And it is a fucking really nice place to live.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it than that.
100%. And, we got to be optimists, and we got to, I think we got to get better. And that's the beautiful part about America is we're never satisfied.
Right? Yeah. We definitely got to be realists.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need to be able to all agree on what the problem is. And I think the problem is quite simple to see. Like, it's not rocket science. It's not even close to rocket science. Right. I don't think people know. I mean, I was just in the Chipotle today before I picked up my youngest son, and this couple walked in with this baby, and it was, the baby Bjorn.
Yeah.
And this little girl, I guess she just had her earrings pierced, and she was so cute. She had these big fat legs, and she was the cutest baby. And so the baby smiled at me, and I smiled at her, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. And I look up and see her parents, and I said, what's so crazy? And they're like, what's that? And I do this all the time. And I said, can you think of the biggest asshole you've ever met? And the guy goes, oh yeah, absolutely. And his wife's like, I mean, yeah, a couple of them. I said, can you imagine that those people were probably this cute at this age? And they both kind of smiled and were like, just hit with a truth bomb, like, boom, right? I said, like, this is going to take this baby to grow up and not smile at people. This baby's smiling at everyone that it sees right now. So I think that also helps me to remind myself too, is that, this person, I've been programmed.
Yeah.
Okay. And I deprogram myself, and then I program myself. So how I see things is a program. How they see things is a program. Well, every program can be changed. As Mandela said, if hate can be taught, then love can be learned. And so, I just think we individually have to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think you need a podcast with, 80 million people. It would be great. I mean, how good would it be to be on a Joe Rogan podcast and talk about love and humanity and not ridiculous stuff, right? I mean, it could have a huge outreach, but we got to just be careful we don't get to the point that when someone speaks like that those other people are so down the rabbit hole that they feel patronized by that. So
yeah, Sean,
we'll just keep climbing.
If you had to give a coaching moment, a Sean Foley nugget of wisdom, right, to to the kids coming out of college now, right? That are heading out into this world, right? Everything, you got the AI impact ahead. It's so interesting listening to college kids talk about how they view the world of not even all the stuff we're talking about, just trying to make their way into this. It's very interesting. But like, what's your Sean Foley golden nugget of wisdom that you had your moment with them and they're about to tee off on this next chapter? What are you saying to them?
Well, I think something that would just be like universal, whether they were going to be an engineer or
Yeah.
whatever they were going to be. I think if you look at, the happiness study at Harvard, right? That they did.
Yeah.
And basically, people who were happy kind of had four things that were intriguingly similar, right? They exercised. Okay. You have to exercise. All right. You so need to exercise. All right. I don't go to don't get me wrong. I don't go to the gym loving it. I don't. It's, to me, it's the necessary evil. It's not, I don't get up for it. But exercise, you have to really do your best to focus on your sleep. Right. 3, like, what's the meaning and purpose behind why you do what you do? Right. So basically what they said was, Harvard said, exercise, no more than 3 deep, meaningful relationships, purpose in their career, right? And often married to their best friend.
Love it.
Right.
And and they were very social creatures, right? They had multiple, they had very healthy relationships. They didn't isolate themselves. It's a lot of,
but they didn't have 10 deep friends, right? They had a bunch of buddies.
Yeah.
And I think we use the word friend too often, where we should use the word acquaintance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Friendship there's like more trust in that. You know what I mean? That it's like, that's through the ups and downs of relationships where friendships really, build, outside of just the special ones that just click, and it's soulmates, so to speak, like with a lot of different souls. Right.
Yeah.
And so I would say, that, I mean, for me, when I first started wanting to coach golf, I didn't know what else I would do. And then 2, it's just what I did. And, I think that, Kate and I were sitting out on the deck the other day, and we live here in Windermere, which is a beautiful place. And we live on a golf course, and I never thought in my life I'd live in a house like this. And I'll tell you what, it was never my focus either. And, we were talking about when we were living in Toronto, and we had this like 900 square foot apartment. And this is back when we used to smoke cigarettes. And so we used to go out on the deck, but the deck wasn't really big enough for either of us to stand, and both of us aren't very big. And we were referring to it as the good old days. And so that's just fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so if we're referring that to the good old days, what are we determining about what today is? And so it just kind of letting them know that, like, the struggle and the grind will be the part that you will appreciate the most. And it's impossible to explain that to someone when they're going through it. But, how many times have we had things happen to us where we were so concerned and upset, and a year later we thought about that day and we were laughing, right? So it's, iron sharpens iron, and pressure and
hundreds or thousands of times. You're like,
and pressure and heat. How's a diamond form? So, right, it's formed with time and incredible pressure and incredible heat. So, I think those are good analogies. I hope those are good analogies for them. But I mean, it's kind of tricky. I would tell them, be up on where we're going, right? I mean, there's some people talking about temporary dystopias. There's all these different they're coming from really brilliant people at MIT. So, really be careful. Like, think about what you're studying and if it's going to be useful. Because I think the first group of people that'll be hit the hardest from it will probably be white collar people making between $125,000 and $250,000. Accounting, lawyers. Imagine the fact that 10 years from now, that it's impossible to get into a trade school because the robots can't do plumbing yet. Right?
Yeah.
And we're going to try to bring jobs back here, which is great, but it's not going to be done by human beings anyway. So, I mean, that's beside the point anyhow, right? But trying to just get people to realize, like, look, we're at an inflection point here, right? It's never going to be what it was, right?
Yeah.
It just can't be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn more about it next week in Aspen. I'm teaching golf at this massive think tank. And the first speakers in the morning, I teach in the afternoon, are Sam Altman, Eric Schmidt, Zuckerberg, and I think Musk. And the discussion is about AI, the good and bad.
Yeah.
And so kind of in these places, there's the NDA, you can't video it, you know what it is, right? And so
that'll be
I'll let you know more
for sure
of what I find. And then I'll watch them all come to the range with their billions of dollars and not be able to hit a golf ball 20 yards. And that's where I come in. Hey, how about the most sought after guy at the weekend in Aspen is the golf coach. I mean, what a crazy, right? Justin, I never told you this, but when I told my dad I was going to coach golf, he said, "That's great, honey. What else are you going to do?" So who would have known 30 years later that I would have given lessons to pretty much every titan of every industry, multiple famous athletes, and 3 or 4 heads of state. Like, crazy, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well,
Sean, we got to unpack another podcast of the rest of your story and all this, because I feel like it's hard to cram all this into a short time frame. But man, there's more to unpack. But
brother, it's the world is a better place because you're in it and you shine light. And
100%.
Thank you. Like we'll
just keep signing. You never know. Maybe maybe there's maybe in the state of Florida, John, there'll be Foley 2028. You just never know.
Never know. You got to make sure you come down to the Floridian and come play some golf with me and John.
Yeah, it's a great spot.
Yeah.
Great spot.
100%, man. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you, man. You are a treat, a joy. I feel very lucky to get to hang out with you and see you, and that my kids get to bump into you and pick that beautiful brain of yours. But really do appreciate you, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yep.
And
my pleasure, guys. Still good to be with you.
We love to have you. Thank you.
I'll see you soon, John.
God bless.
All right, John.
Talk to you.
See ya.